Welcome back, everybody, to the Fantasy Birds. Fantasy basketball is officially here. The season is starting this week. Today, I'm going over 5 sleepers I love drafting extremely late. If you've already drafted, hopefully you were able to snag at least a couple of these guys. Let's hop right into my 5 sleepers for 2024 fantasy basketball. My first sleeper is Kawhi George for the Utah Jazz. Now, if you look at the numbers from 2023, they don't jump off the page at you. 13 points, 3 rebounds, just under 4.5 assists. The defensive numbers are pretty atrocious, but the field goal percentage is really what's going to kill you. 38% field goal percentage for Kawhi George. That is atrocious. But I think we have reason to believe that these numbers are going to be increasing drastically across the board. We know Utah is not a very competitive team as it's currently constructed. So they're incentivized to give Kawhi George basically the keys to the franchise right now to see what he can develop into a very talented 20-year-old player. We saw at the end of last year in the last 5 games, he was right around 20 points per game to go along with some decent assist numbers. We know he's going to facilitate that Utah offense as Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson don't profile to be distributors in this offense. With Patty Mills as the only real competition at the point guard position, I think Kawhi is locked into a very big role in Utah. We've seen in the preseason, Kawhi George is playing extremely well. Last preseason game, he's getting 24 points, 5 assists, and this is on 50% from the floor. So we've seen, if he's able to have a respectable field goal percentage, I think this is a must-draft sleeper in all your leagues. We know the free throw percentage is elite, 85% from the charity stripe last season. And in this preseason game, he goes 7 for 7. So we know that is a major boost in category leagues. For a team that is thinking about the future, I think Kawhi George might be one of their better assets alongside Lauri Markkanen. I think they're going to give him every opportunity to shine in Utah, and I'm excited to see what he can do this upcoming season. I am drafting him everywhere I can this year. My next player, Norman Powell for the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, I don't want to get too excited about a 31-year-old player as a sleeper in fantasy, but we have no choice. This Clippers team has annihilated its roster with Paul George now in Philadelphia, Russell Westbrook out of town, Kawhi Leonard dealing with knee injuries. It's just a matter of time for Kawhi Leonard to be missing time. You know he's going to miss games throughout the regular season. And I think in these opportunities, Norman Powell is going to be an excellent daily player for you, especially in those daily leagues where you can get Powell into your starting lineups. But throughout the regular season, this team is going to be James Harden and Norman Powell when Kawhi Leonard is hurt. The numbers from a season ago aren't exciting given the fact that he was playing behind all these players last year. But now he's going to be relied upon. He's going to be in the starting 5 for this Clippers team. I just think there's too much upside given the circumstances around Kawhi Leonard's knee. This guy is going to be a points guy late in drafts, which we know is hard to come by. Shoots the 3 ball pretty well for this Clippers team. I think him and James Harden just have too much of a floor this season given the question marks around this Clippers team with the departures they've had and Kawhi Leonard's injury history. I think Norman Powell, a great points streamer late in your drafts. My next player is Ammon Thompson for the Houston Rockets. This guy, a very highly talented prospect for the Rockets, maybe their most talented player on this team, if we're being quite honest. Now, he didn't have a huge role last season, only 22 minutes, but across the board, he's putting up decent numbers. He's not much of a scorer, only 9 points a game last year to go along with 50% shooting, so he does have a good field goal percentage. The free throw percentage is abysmal and not much of a jump shot for him. The defensive numbers are good, over a steal per game in only 22 minutes. But we saw at the end of last year, when given an opportunity, a lot of these Houston guys were dealing with some injuries. Ammon Thompson stepped into a much larger role, was able to acquire 31 minutes per game in the last 10 games of the regular season, and he made use of those minutes. He was snagging 14 points, just under 10 rebounds, over 4 assists, a steal and a half per game, and just over half a block per game at over 50% from the floor, which we know he is going to be able to do. Still, no 3-pointers, no free throw percentage here, but when given the role, he's a talented player. I think can make a difference on this Houston team. It is a loaded team with Fred VanVleet, Şengün leading the way. But I think Thompson's just too good to keep off the floor for Houston. If he can get upwards to 27 to 28 minutes, I think he makes a difference for you in category leagues. When I believe he's the most talented player on this Rockets team, I think it's going to be very hard to keep him off the floor, even if this team is pretty deep across the board. My next player is another young, talented prospect, Dyson Daniels for the Atlanta Hawks. Now, he is a part of that big offseason trade for Atlanta and New Orleans coming into Atlanta, part of the DeJounte Murray trade. We saw for years this DeJounte Murray, Trae Young experiment just wasn't working. The Hawks have been struggling for a number of years now. Dyson Daniels wasn't just a throw-in this trade. Larry Nance and Daniels, the players they acquire from New Orleans. This is DeJounte Murray. You're not just going to get him for a bag of chips. Daniels is a talented prospect. He was a lottery pick for this New Orleans team a couple seasons ago, and we saw some promising things from him, especially on the defensive side. Just under a steal and a half per game, and he's only getting this in 22 minutes of action. I think if he can ramp up some minutes, he's a long player in the backcourt, very good defensively. And I think this Atlanta Hawks team with Bogdanovich and Trae Young leading this backcourt, I don't know how long these guys are going to be able to stay on the floor together given their incapabilities on the defensive side of the ball. You can't have Trae Young and Bogdanovich out there guarding NBA backcourts. It's just not going to work out. Daniels does profile to fill that DeJounte Murray role a little bit better. I think they're comparable players. Obviously, Daniels nowhere near in his development as DeJounte Murray is currently, but he does profile to be that defensive stopper to go along with some facilitating abilities. And he is a decent rebounder. I mean, he's right around 4 rebounds and 4 assists a game in only 22 minutes of action. If he can get his numbers up offensively, running the second unit with Trae Young off the floor, we know the steal numbers are going to be there. Definitely a cheap steal option guy in category leagues. He's definitely someone I want to keep my eye on in the last preseason game. He gets you 13 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 steals. So pretty much in line with what we've been talking about. If he's able to take the next step in his development, I think he has a chance to break out in fantasy basketball. Getting him very low, I think very little risk for a guy you know will be able to provide steals and has some offensive capabilities baked into his game. Another young player has kind of been the theme here outside of Norman Powell, but Trayce Jackson-Davis for the Golden State Warriors. Now, everyone's talking about Jonathan Kuminga and some of the guards filling Klay Thompson's role, but I think Trayce Jackson-Davis has the ability to assert himself on this Golden State Warriors team. Just a second-year player, only got 16 minutes a game last year. This Golden State team going to be more inclined to get these young guys some run on the floor. And we've seen that in the preseason. Trayce Jackson-Davis is right in line with the rest of the starters, getting around 20 minutes a game in the preseason. I expect him to play a predominant role in this front court for the Golden State Warriors, who they're really only relying on Draymond Green, Jonathan Kuminga, and what's left of Kevon Looney. So I think there is for sure a path to playing time in this Warriors front court. He's a well-diverse player in your category league. You got to be pretty excited about his block numbers. In only 60 minutes of work, he's over a block per game. And in the preseason, his last game, he gets you 12 points, a rebound, 5 assists to go along with 4 blocks. This guy is a defensive stopper at the rim, very athletic rim protector. Shot just under 70% from the floor. A lot of those looks are going to be at the rim, of course. But if you're looking for cheap blocks at the end of your draft, I think his role might be expanding in Golden State this year, and he's going to deliver those block numbers. So a guy I would be interested in drafting, Trayce Jackson-Davis, as a sleeper in fantasy basketball. Let me know what y'all thought of these sleepers. I'm most excited about Keyonte George this year in Utah. But we had a lot of guys we talked about. Norman Powell with the departures they've had in Los Angeles, along with Kawhi Leonard's consistent knee problems. Ammon Thompson, a talented player out of Houston we think can break out. Dyson Daniels, kind of a similar mold there. And we finished it with Trayce Jackson-Davis for the Golden State Warriors front court. Let me know what y'all think of these guys. Are you drafting them as sleepers, or do you have some sleepers I did not mention today? Let me know in the comments section. Love hearing your guys' opinion. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more fantasy basketball content. We should be coming out with more videos as this season progresses. We're going to be talking fantasy basketball all season long. Appreciate you guys watching. We'll see you guys next time with another episode of the Fantasy Birds.